This is Stefan Molyneux. As you may have heard, 14 years of my life, thousands of videos, billions of comments, hundreds of millions of views, and nearly 1 million subscribers has been destroyed, has been erased from YouTube. The accusation is the usual one that I'm fomenting violence and hatred and so on, which is not true at all. I have consistently promulgated the non-aggression principle and called for reason and evidence as the methodology by which we can resolve social disputes and differences.
Not an argument. Stefan Molyneux has been banned from YouTube for, as far as I can tell, spurious and illegitimate reasons. Despite whatever else might be said about him, Molyneux and others banning at this time seems to be a case of corporate censorship run amok once again. Hello, this is Mr. Patriarch, and today we're going to be looking at what happened to Stefan Molyneux recently and examining some of the causes as to why this may be. But before I do, please like, share, comment, and subscribe, and let's get those numbers up, amigos. Now let's get into it. So overnight, YouTube has banned a number of high-profile YouTube creators, including Stefan Molyneux, American Renaissance, Jared Taylor's organization, MPI Radix, Richard Spencer's outfit, and David Duke. For those unaware, American Renaissance is basically a much smaller version of La Raza for white people. Richard Spencer is basically, for worse rather than better, the race-obsessed Nietzschean face of the now defunct alt-right. And David Duke is the American race idolater-in-chief the corporate press loves to hate, especially around election time. Stefan Molyneux is a man apart, however, in that his politics could be described legitimately as anarcho-capitalist. He's never advocated violence, and in fairness, neither have the other guys on their respective YouTube platforms, crazy as some of them may be. Molyneux is an advocate of the non-aggression principle, and the most controversial thing he's ever done is speculate that the existing average IQ differences between racial groups, and they do exist, may be in part due to genetic factors. And he's had scientists on both sides of the issue on his show to discuss this phenomenon, including intelligence researcher James Flynn, founder of the Flynn effect, which shows IQ increases over time in European populations before flatlining in more recent times. All in all, his banning from YouTube is a rather sorry affair and part of the ongoing trend where conservative and prominent non-leftist voices are routinely silenced on social media platforms, while at times dishonest leftist blowhards like Vaush, who favors violent revolution to overthrow the existing order, by the way, are safe in their respective places. But how did this happen, and why did this happen? Well, for starters, it's an American election year where the God Emperor is hated more than ever by the left and the press, despite not being nearly as America first as his initial supporters would have hoped. Bluster and rhetoric aside, Trump is fundamentally a moderate reformer. He's not some conservative god. Meme war notwithstanding, Trump is not the nationalist supreme a lot of his supporters would have liked to see in the Oval Office. Nevertheless, even being a moderate reformer trying to slow down immigration into the United States is enough to be hailed as the would-be leader of the Fourth Reich by the corporate press. The corporate press is likely smart enough to know this, at least the people at the top, but for rhetorical, financial, and ideological purposes, they're invested in undermining the Trump presidency as it now stands. Molyneux was a Trump supporter, a prominent Trump supporter. He had a very large viewership base, and perhaps the single most important reason for Molyneux's support of Trump, aside from being an enemy of the corporate press and making them look bad.
Mr. President-elect,
go ahead. She's asking a question. Don't be rude.
President-elect, can you give us a question?
Don't be rude.
You're attacking us. Can you give us a question?
Don't be rude. No, I'm not going to give you a question. I'm not going to give you a question.
Can you stay categorically?
You are fake news.
Sir,
go ahead.
Can you stay categorically?
Was his stance on eliminating illegal immigration. Now, so far, Trump hasn't done as much to curb illegal immigration as many of his supporters may have liked, but it's fair to point out that Trump has been stymied on this front from almost every angle. Given time, he may make significant progress on securing the southern border of the United States. The corporate press probably knows this, and getting rid of Molyneux was probably a feather in their cap. But YouTube used to not be as touchy as this. So what happened? The simplest explanation is usually the best one in these matters, so I'm going to go with money. In 2019, YouTube grossed more than $15 billion in revenue. The year before that, $11.16 billion, and in 2018, YouTube grossed a paltry $8.15 billion. Their operating costs have continually exceeded their revenue, and YouTube is not yet profitable, but since bestowing favoritism upon premium content creators and corporate press channels, it seems to be paying off for YouTube somewhat since their revenue has increased so dramatically over the past couple of years. And where the money comes from, so does the influence. This spike in revenue coincides with their shift in prioritizing certain creators and their increase in censorship. While the platform might not yet be profitable, or may ever be, there does seem to be good reason for Google to hang on to the platform, even though it has hitherto lost money. Reason being, quite simply, it's the platform for created video content on the internet. Nothing so far comes close, and for the purposes of influence and creating public opinion and filtering what shapes the zeitgeist, it's likely to remain in its top position for the foreseeable future. The Guardian newspaper hasn't turned a profit in years, yet it is propped up by donations and cash infusions from donors for the purposes of molding popular opinion, and the people who matter read it, sadly, and take it seriously. So, too, for YouTube, though on a much larger, truly massive scale. And as the election season heats up and November comes closer and closer, we're likely to see a further clampdown on dissident voices across the internet. In the end, we'll see what we shall see. And it is my hope that Molyneux lands on his feet.